Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Pilot Officer Riley Jackson. Today marks the 105th anniversary of the Second Battle of Bullecourt in France during the First World War. Following the disastrous First Battle of Bullecourt on the 11th of April 1917, which resulted in over 3,000 Australian casualties, a second attempt to capture the fortified town was made on this day 105 years ago. The battle began at 3:45 on the morning of the 3rd of May, when the Australian 5th and 6th Brigades, along with the British 62nd Division, advanced, supported by an effective artillery barrage. They encountered heavy enemy machine gun and artillery fire, but despite this, the Australians broke into the German frontline positions and held them against furious and costly German counterattacks. As the battle intensified over the next week, the 2nd Division was bolstered by the 1st Division. By the 10th of May, both divisions were exhausted and the 5th Division was brought into the battle. On the 15th of May, the Germans relinquished their hold on what remained of Bullecourt and withdrew. British forces then occupied the town. The battle ended on the 17th of May with both sides exhausted by the struggle. The Australians suffered over 7,000 casualties for the capture of a small and tactically useless village. Today we remember all those who died in the Second Battle of Bullecourt and whose names are recorded here on the Roll of Honour. We also remember the survivors who returned home. Shortly, we will recall the story of 2nd Lieutenant James Cant of the 19th Battalion, who was killed in action during the Second Battle of Bullecourt on the 3rd of May 1917. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the Services Club and RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students from St Finbarr's School, Victoria. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please be seated if you wish. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Second Lieutenant James Cant. James Cant was born on the 28th of December, 1882, in Workington, England. He moved to Australia with his 3 brothers and his parents, James and Anne, when he was 5 years old. The family settled in the coastal city of Newcastle, where James was educated at the local grammar school. On completion of his education, he began working in the mining industry as a surveyor and was later the managing director of a local colliery. He married Annie Montgomery in 1911, and his first child, also named James, was born on the 27th of November that year. James Cant enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 24th of September 1915. Selected for officer training, Cant was sent to Juntroon Military College in Canberra. In August 1916, he earned his commission in the AIF and was appointed second lieutenant. Assigned to reinforcements of the 19th Battalion, he joined his new unit in camp. He embarked for active service from Sydney on the 11th of November 1916, sailing on board the troop ship Swabic. Cant arrived in England at the end of January 1917 and was sent to camp at Rollington. He spent the months which followed training with his men and escorting troops on ships to and from the front. On the 1st of April 1917, he embarked for the Western Front, joining his unit in the trenches just a week later. His arrival came in the aftermath of the enemy's strategic withdrawal from the fortified Hindenburg Line. German forces had begun their gradual withdrawal 3 months earlier in an attempt to straighten their front line and strengthen their defences. Their retreat was eagerly followed by Allied units, resulting in a series of bloody clashes as the advancing troops were confronted with impressive rearguard defences. 3 days after his arrival on the front, Cant was drawn into one of these clashes at the French village of Lagnicourt. Here, the Allied front line had been significantly weakened as resources were drawn to support the British offences at Arras. Taking full advantage, German forces launched a major counterattack in an attempt to break through the line. At dawn on the 15th of April, 1917, 23 German battalions attacked, attempting to retake the village for long enough to destroy equipment and supplies. Cant's unit was one of 4 battalions tasked with repulsing this attack from enemy forces, almost 4 times as strong. Despite their significant disadvantage, these 4 Australian battalions managed to counter German attack and recapture the village within hours, forcing the enemy to retreat. Shortly after their stunning success at Lagnicourt, Cant's unit was moved to the front lines around the French village of Bullecourt. An earlier attempt to break through the Hindenburg Line had been a miserable failure, costing more than 3,000 Australian casualties with no ground taken. Cant's unit was sent over the top on the 3rd of May, 1917, as the Allies made their second attempt to break through the Hindenburg Line and capture the village. In the face of murderous machine guns and artillery fire, they pressed forward, managing to breach the wire entanglements and enter the enemy's front line. Cant and his fellow officer, Lieutenant Davies, fought their way into German listening sap when Cant was shot through the head by an enemy sniper and killed instantly. In the ensuing chaos, his body was unable to be recovered. One of his men, Private Christie, described Cant as a splendid man who was good to us all. His family posted on the memorial notice in the newspaper to Cant on the anniversary of his death in 1918, which read, "He sleeps beside his comrades in a hallowed grave unknown, but his name is written in love letters in the hearts he left at home. May the heavenly winds blow softly over the sweet and hallowed spot. Though the sea divides his grave from us, he will never be forgot." Second Lieutenant James Cant was 34 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Second Lieutenant James Cant, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.